I didn't know dialing that number would put me on the radar of the most dangerous man in the city. The moment stayed frozen in my hands, my phone pressed against my ear, my fingers trembling, the cold marble steps of the bank still beneath my feet as everything around me blurred into noise. 5 minutes earlier it had been normal. Just another Tuesday afternoon. I had been inside for nearly 20 minutes, waiting in line, listening to the soft hum of conversations and the distant clink of coins counting somewhere behind the counter. When I stepped outside, the sunlight hit my eyes too bright, reflecting off windshields and glass towers like something unreal. That's when I saw her. A little girl, maybe 8, standing too close to the curb, clutching a small leather bag like it mattered more than anything else in the world. Her blonde hair caught the light. Her shoes were too clean for the city, and she looked alone. I remember thinking someone should be with her. I remember thinking I should keep walking. Then a black SUV pulled up. It didn't screech. It didn't make a scene. It just stopped. Smooth. Quiet. Wrong. The rear door opened like it had done this before. A man stepped out, well-dressed, calm, like he belonged anywhere he stood. He said something I couldn't hear. The girl hesitated. Just for a second. That second stretched long enough for my stomach to twist. Then everything moved too fast. A hand guiding her, not rough, not violent, but firm in a way that didn't invite questions. The door shut. The SUV pulled away like nothing had happened. And no one noticed. No one except me. I stood there frozen, trying to convince myself it was nothing. That maybe it was her father, a driver, someone she trusted. But something about the way she looked back, just once through the tinted window, stayed with me. That wasn't trust. That was fear trying to stay quiet. I don't know why I moved. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was guilt. But I stepped forward, scanning the ground where she had been standing, and that's when I saw it. A wallet. Small. Elegant. Too expensive to belong to someone like me. My hand shook as I picked it up. Inside there was cash, cards, and a single name that didn't belong in my world. Alexander Romano. Had heard that name before. Everyone had. Not in conversations. In whispers. The kind that stop when someone walks into the room. My first instinct was to put it back. To walk away. To pretend I never saw anything. My life was simple. Small. Safe. And this wasn't safe. But then I looked up at the empty street. And I saw that moment again. The hesitation. The look in her eyes. My thumb hovered over my phone screen. I told myself I was being stupid. That this wasn't my problem. That people like him didn't need help from people like me. But I dialed anyway. The ring barely lasted a second. Romano. His voice was low. Controlled. The kind of voice that didn't ask questions, it expected answers. My throat tightened. I almost hung up. Almost. I think your daughter was just taken. Right outside the bank. Silence. Not confusion. Not disbelief. Silence that felt like something shifting on the other end. When he spoke again, it was quieter. More dangerous. Stay where you are. And just like that, I knew. I hadn't just made a call. I had crossed a line I couldn't see. And couldn't walk back from. I should have run. Every instinct in my body told me to get back in my car, lock the doors, and drive until this moment became something I could pretend never happened. But my feet stayed planted on the sidewalk like they no longer belonged to me. The city kept moving around me. Cars passed. People walked by with coffee cups and phones pressed to their ears. No one noticed that the air had changed. I kept replaying his voice in my head. Stay where you are. It was not a request. It was not even a command. It was a certainty. Like the world had already decided I was not going anywhere. I tightened my grip on the wallet, my thumb brushing over the name again like it might suddenly mean something different the second time. Alexander Romano. I whispered it under my breath, testing how it felt. It did not feel real. Not connected to me. Not connected to this moment. And yet somehow I had just spoken to him. My phone felt heavier in my hand now, like it carried more than just a call log. Like it carried consequence. A black sedan turned the corner at the far end of the street. I would not have noticed it if it had not slowed down. If it had not moved with that same quiet precision I had seen minutes earlier. It did not rush. Did not hesitate. It simply arrived. The car stopped across from me. For a second nothing happened. Then the rear door opened. No words. No signal. Just an invitation that did not feel optional. My heart started beating faster, loud enough that I was sure anyone passing by could hear it. I told myself I could still leave. I could turn around, walk into the nearest store, disappear into a crowd. But I did not move. A man stepped out first. Tall. Clean suit. His eyes scanned the street before they landed on me. Not curious. Not surprised. Certain. Like he already knew exactly who I was. He gave a small nod, and that was enough. I crossed the street before I realized I had made the decision. Each step felt heavier than the last, like I was walking deeper into something I did not understand. When I reached the car, the open door felt like a threshold. I hesitated just long enough to remind myself that I still had a choice. Then I got in. The interior smelled like leather and something sharper underneath, something controlled and expensive. The door closed behind me with a soft, final sound. The city noise disappeared instantly, replaced by silence that felt deliberate. And then I saw him. Alexander Romano sat across from me, one arm resting against the door. His posture relaxed in a way that did not match the tension in the air. He looked exactly how I imagined and nothing like it at the same time. Early 30s maybe. Dark hair perfectly in place. A suit that fit like it had been made for him alone. But it was his eyes that held me there. Cold. Focused. Not angry. Not panicked. Just calculating. He looked at me like I was a piece of information he needed to process. Nothing more. Nothing less. You were the one who called, he said. His voice was quieter now, but somehow heavier. I nodded, suddenly aware of how small I felt sitting across from him. My hands tightened around the wallet in my lap. I think this belongs to you, I said, holding it out slightly. Unsure if I was doing the right thing or making everything worse. He did not take it right away. His gaze stayed on my face, searching, measuring. Then slowly, his eyes dropped to the wallet. When he finally reached for it, his movements were precise, controlled. He opened it, glanced inside, and then closed it again. 1 second. That was all it took. When he looked back at me, something had shifted. Not softer. Not kinder. Just more focused. Tell me exactly what you saw, he said. And for the first time since this started, I realized this was not over. It had only just begun. I opened my mouth, but for a second nothing came out. Not because I did not remember, but because the way he was looking at me made every detail feel heavier, like each word I said might matter more than it should. I forced myself to breathe slow and steady, the way I used to before presentations in college when my hands would not stop shaking. The car was silent except for that faint hum of the engine, smooth and controlled, like everything around him. I saw her outside the bank, I said finally, my voice quieter than I expected. She was alone. Too alone. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes sharpened, like he was already building the scene in his mind. What time? Around 2:15. Maybe 2:20. I glanced at the dashboard without meaning to, as if it might still hold the answer. He followed my gaze, then looked back at me, waiting. A black SUV pulled up, I continued, the words coming faster now that I had started. It did not rush. It just stopped, like it knew exactly where it was supposed to be. His jaw tightened slightly. Not enough for most people to notice, but I did. And the man, I added, he stepped out like he belonged there. Like nothing about it was strange. He said something to her. I could not hear it. Did she go willingly? The question came quick, precise. Not emotional. Just exact. I shook my head before I realized I was doing it. No, not really. She hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. Enough for me to know something was wrong. I swallowed, my throat dry. He guided her into the car. Not rough. But not optional either. The words hung between us. Not rough. Not optional. Alexander leaned back slightly, his fingers tapping once against his knee. A small movement that felt louder than it should have. Details, he said. Everything you remember. I closed my eyes for half a second, pulling the image back into focus. The sunlight. The reflection on the windows. The way the girl looked back. The license plate, I said quickly, my eyes opening again. I only caught part of it. California plate. The last 3 numbers were 6, 4, and maybe a 9. I am not sure about the last one. His hand stilled. That was the first real reaction. Subtle, but there. Good, he said, almost to himself. Very good. I felt something shift again. Not in him. In the space between us. I was no longer just a stranger who made a call. I had information. And that made me useful. There was something else, I said before I could stop myself. His gaze snapped back to me instantly. What? The man. He wore a ring. Silver. Thick band. There was a symbol on it. I hesitated, trying to remember it exactly. It looked like a crest. Or a letter. I am not sure. But it was not random. He froze. Not completely. But enough that the air in the car changed. For the first time since I met him, I saw something that was not control. Recognition. He turned his head slightly, speaking to someone in the front seat in a language I did not understand. His tone still calm but faster now, sharper. The man in the passenger seat nodded immediately, already pulling out a phone. I sat there, my hand still wrapped around nothing now that the wallet was gone, trying to understand what I had just done. You said she looked back, Alexander said. His voice returning to me, quieter this time. I nodded slowly. Yes. Once. His eyes held mine for a long second. What did that look mean? The question caught me off guard. It was not about facts. It was about feeling. I hesitated, searching for the right word, the one that would not sound dramatic or wrong. Like she wanted someone to notice, I said softly. Like she was hoping someone would not look away. Silence filled the car again, heavier now, more deliberate. And then he said something that made my chest tighten without warning. You did not look away. It was not praise. It was not gratitude. It was something else. Something that sounded a lot like a decision. The car did not speed up, but I could feel it moving faster now, like something unseen had shifted beneath the surface. Alexander did not look at me again right away. His gaze drifted past me, out the tinted window, but I could tell he was not seeing the street. He was seeing patterns, connections, pieces falling into place that I did not understand. The man in the front seat was already on the phone, speaking in low, controlled bursts, his words precise and efficient. No panic. No wasted motion. Everything about them felt practiced, like this was not the first time something had gone wrong. And that realization made my stomach tighten. Because if this was normal to them, then I had stepped into something far bigger than I ever intended. You said a ring, Alexander repeated after a moment, his voice quieter now, but sharper. I nodded. Yes. Silver. Thick band. The symbol looked old. Not decorative. Like it meant something. He exhaled slowly, almost like a confirmation rather than a reaction. His fingers brushed once against his jaw, a small movement that felt like restraint. Then he leaned forward slightly, his focus returning fully to me. Which direction did the car go? I blinked, forcing my memory back again. Left. Toward Madison. It merged into traffic, but it did not rush. It stayed controlled. He nodded once, already turning that into something actionable. The man in the front seat repeated the direction into the phone immediately. I watched them, trying to keep up, trying to understand how quickly everything was moving around me while I felt completely still. Minutes ago, I had been standing outside a bank, thinking about groceries and bills, and whether I had enough gas to make it through the week. Now I was sitting in a car with a man whose world operated on an entirely different level, where every second mattered and every detail carried weight. Why did you call? He asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. Not because I did not have an answer, but because I had not expected him to care about it. I frowned slightly, unsure how to respond. Because she needed help, I said. Felt too simple the second I said it out loud. Too small compared to everything happening around us. His eyes held mine again, searching like he was trying to decide if that answer was real, or just something people said to feel better about themselves. Most people would have walked away, he said. I did not respond right away. I knew he was right. I had almost walked away. I almost did, I admitted quietly. The honesty surprised even me. But I did not. Silence stretched between us, but it did not feel empty. Felt like something being measured. We turned a corner. The city shifting outside the window, buildings giving way to wider streets, less crowded sidewalks. The distance between where this started and where I was now felt bigger than the few blocks we had actually traveled. Then his phone rang. A different tone this time. Sharper. Immediate. He answered without hesitation. Yes. His voice was calm, but I could hear something underneath it now. Not fear. Not panic. Something colder. He listened for a few seconds, his expression tightening just enough for me to notice. Confirm it, he said. I want eyes on every exit within a 2-mile radius. No one leaves without me knowing. He ended the call and sat back again, but the air had changed. It was heavier now. More focused. He looked at me again, and this time there was no distance in his gaze. Just clarity. They are not as far as they think, he said. I felt a chill run through me, even though the car was warm. What does that mean? It means, he replied, his voice steady, controlled, that whoever took her made a mistake. He paused, just long enough for the words to settle. And you are the reason I know it. I swallowed, my hands tightening in my lap again. That did not feel like relief. Felt like responsibility. And then he added something that made my breath catch. You are staying with me until this is finished. It was not a threat. It was not a question. It was a decision already made. And in that moment I understood something I should have realized earlier. This was not just about what I saw anymore. This was about the fact that I was now part of it. For a second I thought I misheard him. Staying with him was not something that fit into my world, not something that made sense in any version of my life before today. I felt my chest tighten, that instinct again telling me to pull away, to create distance, to remind him that I was just someone who happened to be there at the wrong time. I am not part of this, I said, the words coming out faster than I expected, sharper than I intended. I just made a call. That is all. His expression did not change, but something in his posture did. Not aggressive. Not defensive. Certain. You saw them, he replied, his voice calm but unyielding. You spoke to me. That makes you involved whether you want it or not. I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out, because a part of me already knew he was right. The moment I dialed his number, I had stepped into something that did not have an exit I could see. The car slowed slightly as we approached an intersection, then continued without stopping, the traffic around us adjusting as if it knew better than to get in the way. I glanced toward the window, watching the city pass by, but it felt distant now, like something I was no longer part of. What happens when you find her? I asked quietly, not sure why I needed to know, only that I did. His gaze shifted to me again, steady, controlled. I bring her home, he said. Simple. Direct. But there was something underneath it. Not just a statement. Promise. And then, almost as an afterthought, he added, and I make sure this does not happen again. The way he said it made it clear that his version of making sure was not something I could fully understand. I swallowed, my hands tightening again. And me? The question slipped out before I could stop it. His eyes held mine for a long second, like he was deciding how much truth to give me. You stay safe, he said finally. It sounded reassuring. It should have been. But it was not the kind of safety I was used to. It was the kind that came with rules I did not know yet. The car turned again, this time into a quieter street lined with buildings that looked newer, cleaner, more private. The kind of place where people did not ask questions because they already knew better. We pulled into an underground garage, the light shifting from bright afternoon to soft artificial glow. The doors closed behind us with a low hum, sealing us inside. My heartbeat picked up again, louder in the enclosed space. The engine cut, and for a moment, everything went completely still. One of the men stepped out first, opening my door before I could reach for the handle. The gesture was polite, controlled, but it was not optional. I hesitated just for a second, before stepping out onto the smooth concrete floor. The air was cooler down here, quieter, like the world above had been shut off completely. Alexander stepped out on the other side, adjusting his jacket with a small, practiced motion. Then he looked at me again, and this time there was no distance at all. Just focus. Stay close, he said. Not loud, not harsh, but final. I nodded before I could stop myself. He started walking and I followed without thinking, my steps echoing softly in the empty space. An elevator waited at the far end, already open, as if it had been expecting us. We stepped inside, the doors closing behind us with a soft click that felt louder than it should have. As the elevator began to rise, I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall. I looked the same. Same clothes. Same face. But something was different. Something had shifted in a way I could not explain. I was no longer just Emily Carter. the woman who worried about rent and groceries and getting through the week. I was standing in an elevator with a man who had just decided I was not leaving his world anytime soon. And the worst part was I did not know if I should be afraid of that, or something else entirely. The elevator moved smoothly, almost silently, but I could feel every inch of it as it carried me higher into a place I did not belong. The numbers above the door lit up one by one, steady and precise, like everything else around him. No one spoke. The men behind us stood still, their presence constant but distant, like shadows that knew their place. I kept my eyes on the reflection in the mirrored wall, watching myself stand beside Alexander Romano like it was someone else entirely. He looked completely at ease, like this was just another part of his day, like nothing had gone wrong. But I could see it now if I looked closely enough. The tension in his jaw, the slight tightening of his hand at his side. Control, not calm. The doors opened without a sound. The space beyond was nothing like I expected. Not dark, not intimidating. Clean lines, soft lighting, floor-to-ceiling windows stretching across the far wall, overlooking the city like it belonged to him. Felt quiet in a different way here. Not empty, controlled. Every detail placed exactly where it was meant to be. "Stay here," he said, his voice low but clear as he stepped forward. I hesitated just inside the doorway, unsure if that meant I should stop moving or simply not wander. He turned slightly, just enough to meet my eyes again. "It means you do not leave this floor, Emily." Hearing my name in his voice still felt wrong, like it carried more weight than it should. I nodded, even though something inside me resisted the idea of being told where I could and could not go. But I stayed, because I knew this was not a place where ignoring him would end well. He moved further into the room, already pulling out his phone again, his attention shifting back to something I could not see. The men who had followed us stepped aside, positioning themselves near the entrance without blocking it, but making it very clear it was not an open path. I stood there for a moment, unsure what to do with my hands, my thoughts, the fact that my entire day had split into before and after a single decision. Then I noticed it. A small desk near the window, a tablet resting on its surface, screen lit, displaying what looked like a map. My steps were slow, cautious, but no one stopped me as I moved closer. Streets, traffic patterns, small blinking indicators moving across the grid. I did not understand all of it, but I understood enough. They were tracking something. Or someone. "You remember anything else?" His voice came from behind me, closer than I expected. I turned slightly, my heart skipping once before settling again. Alexander stood a few feet away now, his focus back on me completely. I looked at the screen again, then back at him. "The way the car moved," I said slowly, trying to find the right words. It did not rush. It stayed within traffic, like it was trying not to be noticed, not to stand out. He nodded once, like that confirmed something he already suspected. "And the man," I added, my brow tightening as I forced the memory clearer. He did not look nervous. He looked prepared, like this was planned down to the second. Silence followed that, but it was different now. Not empty. Building. Alexander stepped closer to the desk, his hand resting lightly against its edge as he looked at the map. Then he made a small adjustment, tapping the screen once. The pattern shifted. The blinking indicators changed direction. The room seemed to respond to him without him needing to raise his voice or repeat himself. It was subtle but undeniable. This was his world, and everything in it moved when he decided it should. He looked at me again, and this time there was something else in his expression. Not just calculation. Recognition. "You notice things most people miss," he said quietly. I did not know how to respond to that. It did not feel like a compliment. It felt like something more permanent. Something that meant I was not going to fade back into my normal life when this was over. Because a part of him had already decided I was useful. And in his world, that was not something that disappeared. The way he said it stayed with me longer than it should have. "You notice things most people miss." It echoed in my head as I stood there, staring at the shifting map, watching small glowing markers move like pieces on a board I did not understand. I told myself it did not mean anything. That he was just using whatever information he could get. That this was temporary. But something about the way he looked at me said otherwise. Like he had already decided I was part of the equation now. A soft sound broke through my thoughts. One of the men near the entrance stepped forward, speaking quietly, handing Alexander a phone that was not his own. A different line. A different level. Alexander took it without hesitation, his posture shifting just slightly, like he was preparing for something more important than anything else in the room. Yes, he said, his voice calm, controlled. He listened, his expression unreadable, but I could feel the change in the air almost instantly. The room seemed to tighten around him, like everything was waiting for what he would say next. I watched him carefully, trying to read something in his face, anything that might tell me if this was good news or something else. Then I saw it. The smallest shift. Not relief. Not anger. Recognition. Send me the location, he said quietly. Do not engage. Not yet. He ended the call, and for a moment he did not move. He just stood there, looking at the screen in front of him like he was aligning everything in his mind. Then he turned slightly toward me. They have eyes on the vehicle, he said. My breath caught without warning. That was fast. Too fast. How? I stopped myself before I finished the question, because I already knew the answer would not be something simple. He stepped closer to the table again, his hand moving across the screen with precise control. The map adjusted instantly, zooming in, narrowing down to a specific part of the city I did not recognize right away. An industrial area. Wide roads. Fewer buildings. Less traffic. They stayed within range, he continued, almost to himself. Predictable. That word sent a small chill through me. Predictable meant they made a mistake. And in his world, mistakes had consequences. Are they going to hurt her? I asked before I could stop myself. The question came out softer than I intended, but it carried everything I was trying not to think about. He looked at me again, and for the first time since I met him, something in his expression shifted in a way I could not ignore. Not weakness. Not fear. But something human. No, he said. Firm. Certain. Not if they want to stay alive. The way he said it was not a threat. It was a fact. And somehow that made me believe him. Completely. He turned away from me again, already moving, already giving quiet instructions that the men around him followed without hesitation. The room came alive in a different way now. Not chaotic. Focused. Purposeful. Like everything had been waiting for this exact moment. I stood there watching it all unfold, realizing how far I had been pulled from the life I understood. And then something else hit me. Harder than anything else so far. If they had found the car that quickly, if everything was already in motion, then this was not going to end quietly. My gaze dropped back to the map, to the blinking point that now represented a real place, a real moment, a real child waiting somewhere she should not be. And I felt it then. Not fear. Not exactly. Responsibility. Because I was the reason this started moving. I was the reason he knew where to look. And whether I liked it or not, I was now tied to whatever happened next. Everything started moving faster after that, but somehow the room felt quieter. Like the noise had been replaced with something sharper, more focused. I stood near the edge of the table, my eyes locked on the single blinking point that marked where she was. It did not look like much. Just a small light on a screen. But it carried weight now. Real weight. That point was not just a location. It was Sophie. And everyone in the room knew it. We move in 5 minutes, Alexander said, his voice cutting clean through the silence. No hesitation. No discussion. The men around him responded immediately, each one shifting into place like they had done this 100 times before. Phones moved. Quiet confirmations passed between them. No one raised their voice. They did not need to. Everything about this felt rehearsed, controlled, precise. And that made it more unsettling than anything loud or chaotic ever could. I stayed where I was, unsure if I was supposed to follow, to step back, or to disappear into the background. But before I could decide, Alexander turned toward me again. You are coming with me, he said. It was not what I expected. My breath caught slightly, and I shook my head before I could stop myself. No, I said, the word coming out faster than I intended. I have done enough. I told you what I saw. You can handle the rest. For a moment, no one else in the room moved. Not because of me. Because of him. Because I had just said no to someone who clearly was not used to hearing it. But he did not react the way I thought he would. He did not raise his voice. He did not step closer. He just looked at me, steady, unblinking, Like he was giving me time to understand something I had not fully grasped yet. They saw you, he said quietly. The words landed heavier than anything else he had said so far. I felt my stomach drop. What? The vehicle. The angle. The timing. You were standing too close, he continued, his voice still calm, still controlled. If they review anything, if they retrace their steps, they will know someone noticed. A chill ran through me, slow and undeniable. That had not crossed my mind. Not until now. You think they would come back? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I do not think, he replied. I prepare. Silence followed that. Thick. Final. He stepped closer, just enough to lower his voice without anyone else needing to hear. If you stay here, you are exposed. If you come with me, you are protected. The choice is yours. Sounded like a choice. Did not feel like one. I looked back at the screen, at the blinking point that had started all of this, and then back at him. Everything inside me told me to walk away. To go back to the life I understood. But that life already felt too far away. Like it belonged to someone else. I exhaled slowly. Fine, I said, the word steady even if I did not feel that way. I will come. He held my gaze for a second longer like he was confirming something, then gave a small nod. Good. That was all. No reassurance. No explanation. Just acceptance. He turned away immediately, already moving toward the door, and the room followed him like gravity had shifted in his direction. I hesitated for half a second before stepping forward, my feet carrying me into something I could not see the end of. As I reached the doorway, I realized something that settled deep in my chest. I was not just following him because I had no other option. I was following him because somewhere along the way, I had already decided I was not going to look away again. The hallway outside felt different from the moment before. Like crossing an invisible line where hesitation no longer had a place. The doors opened ahead of us before anyone reached for them, and the elevator was already waiting, silent and ready, as if time itself had adjusted to his pace. No one spoke as we stepped inside, but this time the silence carried weight. Not uncertainty, not confusion, direction. The doors closed and I felt it again, that shift in my chest, like something inside me was trying to catch up to everything happening around me. Alexander stood beside me, his posture unchanged, his focus already somewhere ahead, somewhere I could not see yet. The numbers lit up in reverse now as we descended, each floor bringing us closer to whatever came next. I glanced at the mirrored wall again, but this time I did not recognize the expression looking back at me. It was not fear. Not exactly. It was something steadier. Something that had already decided to keep going. The elevator opened into the garage, and everything moved the second we stepped out. Doors opened. Engines started. The same black sedan waited, but now it felt different. Not just a car. A step forward. One of the men opened the rear door again, and this time I did not hesitate. I got in. Alexander followed, the door closing behind us with that same quiet finality. The car pulled out smoothly, merging into motion like it had never stopped. The city above felt distant again, like a layer I had already moved past. I watched the streets through the tinted window, the familiar buildings passing by, but they did not feel like mine anymore. They felt like something I was leaving behind with every block. How far? I asked quietly. Not sure if I was asking about distance or something else entirely. 10 minutes, he replied without looking at me. His eyes were fixed ahead, his mind already moving through possibilities, outcomes, decisions I could not see. The man in the front seat spoke softly, confirming routes, adjusting something I could not fully hear, but I caught enough to understand that nothing about this was left to chance. I shifted slightly in my seat, my hands resting together in my lap, trying to keep them steady. My thoughts kept drifting back to the girl, to that single look through the window, to the way everything had started with a moment most people would have ignored. And then something else surfaced. The ring. The symbol. I frowned slightly, my mind replaying that detail over and over, trying to make it clearer, sharper, more defined. Wait, I said suddenly, the word slipping out before I could filter it. Alexander turned his head just enough to look at me, his attention immediate. What? I hesitated for a fraction of a second, organizing the thought before it disappeared. The ring, I said. The symbol. It was not just a shape. It looked like a letter. Like an M. Or maybe two lines crossing. Something structured. His expression changed instantly. Not dramatically, but enough. The kind of change you would miss if you were not looking for it. The car did not slow, but the energy inside it shifted. "That is not random," he said quietly. More to himself than to me. He leaned forward slightly, speaking to the man in the front, his voice lower now, more precise. "Check internal affiliations. Cross-reference recent movements." The man nodded immediately, already moving to follow the instruction. I sat back, my pulse picking up again, but this time it was different. Not fear. Awareness. Because I could feel it now. The pieces were connecting faster. Closer. And somehow I was part of that process. The car turned sharply onto a wider road. The buildings thinning out. The city opening into something more industrial, more isolated. My breath slowed without me realizing it, like my body was preparing for something my mind had not caught up to yet. Then Alexander spoke again, his voice calm, but carrying something deeper beneath it. "When we arrive, you stay close to me. No sudden movements. No stepping away." I nodded without hesitation. I understood now. This was not just about following instructions. This was about survival inside a world that did not forgive mistakes. The car slowed slightly as we approached a stretch of warehouses, large metal structures lined up under the fading afternoon light. Quiet. Too quiet. My eyes moved across the scene, searching without knowing what I was looking for. And then I saw it. A black SUV, parked near the far end. Still. Waiting. My breath caught, my body going completely still as everything narrowed to that one point. That one moment. That one decision that had brought me here. And as the car came to a slow stop, I realized something I could not ignore anymore. This was not just his world I had stepped into. It was a moment that was about to decide everything.